special agent with the FBI, and it's great to be here with you. But so we're going to talk about special events planning, and what that means from an FBI standpoint. Hopefully there's something we have that you can take back to your counties. But I'd like to go around really quickly just to help us better understand how many have been involved in special event planning before. Okay, probably most here. The other piece was, I'm interested in what counties are you from? So let me just go around and you can just shout out the city and the county where you're from.
Delta, Utah, Miller County.
Same.
Okay.
Rich County.
Carolyn? Same? Okay.
Logan, okay.
State, okay. All right.
Ridgefield.
School County? Okay, so far most of our smaller counties in the state, which is kind of what we figured it would be. Monticello?
Buffalo, Utah, Buffalo County.
Monticello as well? Okay. Okay. Washington as well.
We're all Davis County.
Davis County. Okay. So a few of the bigger counties, but a lot of the smaller ones. So when we look at special events in the FBI, so my role is I'm our crisis management coordinator. When we kind of look at special events, we break it up. We'll go, the incident that happens, we're going to call it, is boom. And we consider that the event planning is to the left of boom. Once boom happens, then to the right, that is what we call our critical event. Right? So things completely change at that point. So we're going to focus primarily on the event planning. But when you look at the whole thing, you have to take it all into perspective. The event planning itself, if something happens, and then what's your response afterwards. Three things we look at. First is security, and that's just the physical security to prevent the loss of life or injuries to someone. We're going to look at the crisis management, and the intent there is to provide a safe environment for the event, but then also to provide an environment for us to be able to collect evidence if something happens. And then finally, we have our consequence management, which is just basically returning things to normal. Now, when we look at it, we use a model that's called intelligence-driven. Now, as we do this presentation, when you hear the terms information and intelligence interchanged, we're referring to the same thing. So the models we use are all intelligence-driven. So I'm going to let Dave Elkington, he's a special agent as well, that oversees our actual special events planning. He's going to talk a little bit about how we rate all of our special events, and then how we use the same model primarily throughout each one of these events. And then after Dave, Steve Cheever, who's from the United States Attorney's Office, and he's had a lot of experience right here in Utah for special events planning. He's going to talk about a little bit some of the events that he's been a part of.
And we wanted to make this really informative, so
We don't want to just lecture up here.
yeah,
We want to
ask
have a
questions.
PhD discussion. At the end, we are going to throw out some scenarios and request your input with those scenarios.
Okay, thanks, Mike. My name is Dave Elkington. I'm 21 years with the FBI. I've been in Salt Lake for 5 years. Before that, I was in Oakland for about 3 years, and I was in St. Louis for 14 years. So in my event experience, I was what they call a special events coordinator in St. Louis, Missouri for 7 years. And when I was there, I represented the FBI's interests. And the FBI's interests are very different than your interests in terms of a special event, because at a federal level, state level, local level, they vary quite a bit in terms of why we would be involved in making each of our clients. However, that being said, all of that level, that federal level, state level, local level event is all scalable. It's a scalable model that we use to plan for events. My experience in events is I was involved in representing the FBI's interest in the 2004 President's Debate, 2004 World Series, 2006 World Series, 2008 Vice President's Debate, 2009 Baseball World Series, and a number of NCAA Final Fours and lots of local events there at the St. Louis area. And I left there, I stopped doing that. Now that I'm in Salt Lake, I've been reappointed to the position. We don't have many World Series in Salt Lake, so I don't think that's going to be an issue.
More NBA channel.
or ABH.
That changes some.
We do have a vice president's debate coming up here at the University of Utah in October, so we are planning for that. And of course, Salt Lake has attendees, so there is that on the list of things. With respect to what Mike said, an intelligence-driven model. So let me just step back even before that. All of you, from what I saw by show of hands, are involved in event planning. Let me just ask the question then, when you do your event planning, just kind of give me a couple ideas here. Whatever the event might be, the county fair, whatever the case may be, a festival or something. Do you sit down, how do you begin your planning for the event? Is this we just wing it? Or we sit down with some sort of a group of people together, put our heads together and figure out how we're going to do this? Is it more of the second, or are we just winging it? Mayor says, the county commissioner says, let's have a festival, and we'll have it on this day, and everybody show up. Is that how we do it?
We've pulled together our public safety elements, the sheriff's office, our fire, EMS folks, and the neighboring jurisdictions, and look at the response side of things, and develop our access, egress, pre-staging of resources, landing zones, things like that.
Okay.
And establish that. And then we would push that out to the fair committee and so forth. We just now recently sent some folks to some training, and we're going to review this process here. People are from the ground up.
Okay, so two things. The event committee, right? So whatever the event is, there's going to be a planning committee for that event. That committee probably doesn't know much about security per se. So they're going to defer that over to some experts, right? They know about selling tickets, marketing, getting, the venues, finding the specific events for whatever the case may be, whatever the event may be. But when it comes to the security, they're going to defer that to what they believe to be subject matter experts in whatever that capacity may be. And so in planning any event, just kind of as a base model, you have an executive. There's an executive leadership element. They have the authority to appoint people to certain positions. In that security event, or in that security planning, the event planning, they'll plan for the security, they'll defer down to a subgroup or a subcommittee, which would be security. And if you don't do that, you should be doing that. So I see the word Utah County's indemnity pool. So indemnity is an important part, the planning is an important part of your indemnification process. As you go about planning for your security, you get your group together. Who do you say would be in such a group?
Traditionally, public safety response, both county and then local jurisdiction.
Okay, public safety response, sheriff or his appointee, his designee, fire might be there, EMS, something along those lines. People involved with safety and security elements. Within that component, they're going to generate, they have two things that in safety and security we need to think about. One is, this is what we always do. We always get together, and for this event that we've been doing for 30 years, the sheriff says, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And that kind of becomes a basic model of how we're going to plan our event. And then from there, so you have limited resources. From there you could say, well, in our basic model we always have 4 deputies on, and we get a couple of state patrol troopers to help us out and make those arrangements. But from there, then there's also an intelligence-driven component. And so you have to stop and think, what we recommend is you stop and think, okay, in our situation, in our scenario, in our event, what might be
Knowledge first.
The furnace up there.
what might be some scenarios, what might be some, we do what we call threat and risk assessment, okay? And so you gather information of the sheriff or his security people, his police officers, through different avenues, his deputies, gather information about what might be some threats to our event. What is the nature of the event? Based on the nature of the event, what are some situations that could happen? Keeping in mind that during any event, this jurisdiction, your jurisdiction, still has to function in day-to-day operations. You still have to patrol the street. You still have to go and deal with fire calls, medical calls, all this kind of stuff. So you're functioning with limited resources you cannot dedicate to your event. So you want to try to be efficient and make good use of your resources that are available, and certainly with the financial side, everybody's going to ask, how much is it going to cost? It's always a major factor. If you have good information, if you try to get good information, good intelligence, and you kind of go through that what-if scenario, that what if this happens, what would we do? And you table talk through some of those kind of scenarios, at least have some discussion of what those things might be, and I'll go into some of the possibilities here in a minute. You're preparing then to deploy the resources and plan the resources and deploy them as necessary. Realizing that you may not be called upon to do it. It might be just another festival, another state fair, your standard issues that come up, lots of children, people getting drunk, alcohol-related issues, fights, whatever those circumstances might be. Your everyday police people. But the intelligence and the information you're gathering will help you be efficient and help you, at some point, put your plan on paper as part of the indemnification process will probably require. So if didn't hear the gentleman before, but it sounded like it was a legal brief of some type. If you're involved in making sure that your event, your county is not held legally liable for something, you're going to want to have your plan on paper or document. Some potential threats as we've gone through. Now let me kind of talk through, for example, from my experience. 2004, Washington University of St. Louis, we had President John Kerry. It was the first presidential debates in the first election post 9/11. The security posture was tough. The Secret Service was involved, of course. Lots and lots of resources available, lots of money available. Those were big events, debates and things. So they were intelligence driven from the perspective of what can we justify, what is our posture, what will we state in terms of resources. We had it was post 9/11, it was also the Iraq War was post. We had the protesters to deal with it, and we had the people that were political differences and all sorts of different things that come up. So we planned for those specific kind of contingencies, and yet police departments that were involved had to also plan for your basic, typical criminal activity. The fire had to plan for your typical fire activities that were called on, medical situations. So they planned for the contingencies that the intelligence gave them about the event posture, the security posture of the country at the time. And then we rolled out, so we handled that event, and then 4 years later we rolled out the vice president's debate, which was a very different, it's a political debate. So the circumstances were similar in the sense that the event was the same, but the posture was different, the threat information was different, the intelligence was different. So we scaled things way down. We scaled things. In 2008, we didn't go out nearly as aggressive in staging all of the assets that we need to handle for security. And in your situation, not that you're doing an event of that size, but you're still doing events in your venues or your jurisdictions that would have to be driven by intelligence. So the question is then, okay, what is the intelligence, and how do I get it, and how do I work as you're planning your events and your security people planning events? And to address the questions of that nature, I'm going to let our intel specialist talk about that. Steve Cheever from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who also has extensive experience in the Salt Lake City Police Department with event planning and that event. So, Steve, go ahead and take that intel.
I'm going to tell you about one avenue that's going to be at your availability city point of view and not law enforcement, correct? The sort of, okay. The state Department of Public Safety has the Fusion Center. Fusion centers were started after 9/11 under the finances of the Department of Homeland Security, and it's a center in Utah that's all crimes related. A lot of places are just terrorism related, but it's all crimes related. And it gathers intelligence from across the state of Utah and surrounding areas for any incident that might that might occur. Where Dave was talking about the pre-boom event, the fusion centers made to try and prevent that. They have intel liaison officers. They call them ILOs across the state. Most of the departments have been approached to get an ILO. I think there's 117 or 130 across the state. You probably have ILOs from your departments in your counties who have access to the databases of the State Fusion Center. And they have an special events aspect that they can help you with. Some of the things that they do are in the bullet points on the left. Coordination with the efforts of the state locals. They will send out an RFI across the state to say there's going to be beach days in Perry, or there's going to be this event in Washington County, the Ironman, or whatever it might be. And they'll ask for any intelligence that might be out there in our AOR that might affect that. And it's something that you might not think about. For example, I've worked the fair here in Salt Lake City for many years. It's been 11 years since I left the police department, but I worked part-time for the fair for about 20 years before that. And we have things occur here that you might not have had, for example, in Orange County or Norfolk County or whatever. Protesters that, animal rights protesters who don't like the fact that you have pigs in cages. And they'll come down either during the day or the night and protest. They might, for example, you had an event at the Circuit 4 Farms in your county where they came from Salt Lake City. They went to Circuit 4 Farms. They let animals out of the cages and brought them back up to a sanctuary, in quotation marks, up in Salt Lake City. Then they videotape what they do, and then they put that over the internet. The SIAC may help you look for the intelligence of what's being planned. The SIAC monitors Twitter accounts. They look at what's out there in open source. You know what I mean by open source? That's published on the internet. A lot of times these groups will talk about what they want to do in order to get their people together, and they'll make these plans openly on the internet. The SIAC mines that data, and then that is available for you. They can help you with, we're going to talk about active shooter in a few minutes. They will look at any intelligence that's there for that. They can help you with pre-event assessment intelligence products. So think about the SIAC and your local ILO and getting them involved in this process. I'm an ILO, not from the police department's point of view, but from the USAO, the United States Attorney's aspect.
A quick question with that. How many have used the Fusion Center or SIAC before? Have you ever heard of that? There's only a couple here. Have you worked directly with them before?
It's kind of a unique situation. Maybe the Olympics rodeo most of them place military a lot.
So you had to do all so you had a very good experience with that.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Chris?
There's significant resources. You can use them quite a bit.
And they'll think of things that you might not think about on a normal daily basis, because it's amazing how far people to the right and how people to the left move. Take it too far, how they start thinking. They'll think about things that you may not think about, and they are a significant resource for you.
Kind of just picture them again as an intelligence hub. Throughout the entire state, everyone is feeding them with intelligence or information they get. FBI, we have sources out on the street who we work with. They'll feed us information. When we get something that's useful, would be useful for the state and counties, we pass that on to SIAC. They in turn pass it out through these ILOs to police departments. So if you're planning a fair, down in Sevier County, you've got a fair coming up, and you're worried about a specific group or whatnot, you can send them specific questions to see if do they have any information about this group. So that you can feed them questions, they'll get back to you information. They are a great group to get to know.
I mean, you really have to think outside the box. For example, down in the tropic area, we had a guy who was anti-establishment, anti-development, didn't want to see the United States or any society prosper. So he figured out a way that he could shut the power down for 3 counties with a cost of $1 million to fix. Very easily. They're going to think about that kind of thing because they have a critical infrastructure aspect. They actually have a DHS critical infrastructure person that sits at the site. So.
Thanks, Steve. So let me ask you a question. So let's say you query the SIAC, State Information Analysis Center. You query them. Your law enforcement officers in the area have queried whatever sources they might have. You've done public source searches for any sort of public information of the threat, and you come back with that. Doesn't seem to be any articulated threat or anything that we can perceive as being threatening to our event. Does that mean your event is going to fly off without any issues, no problems? You're good to go. Just sit back, put our feet up and have a beer, and we're good to go. Is that what that means? Not at all. Not at all. So your planning process, your safety security planning process, you're threat driven, but your threat information comes back as relatively negative, which is positive means there's no positive intelligence, so it's not suggesting there's a problem, but that's still intelligent. The intelligence is that there's no intelligence. If that makes sense. However, in your planning process, you still have contingencies that you probably need to think about and work through. Now, it's kind of that what-if scenario, and you can what-if yourself to death. So it doesn't become that we have to cover 100 what-if scenarios, but you've got some major things that could come up according to national trends in crimes, or according to the specific jurisdiction or the nature of the venue you're having, the nature of the event, whatever your event might be. So you kind of got to go through that. What if this happens? And what if this happens? Now, if you can't cover all of the what ifs, does going through any one what if, is that helpful? Is it helpful to all the other what ifs that you can't cover? Does anybody have an idea on that? Thought? Does that make sense what I'm saying? The point being that if you don't plan, you're probably going to fail. But if you plan and you set as a group of people, your executive committee and your subcommittees have set as different groups of people. You know each other. You've talked through what your resources are. There are always resource issues. You've talked to, okay, in this event, in a countywide, all of the departments probably have some play in the event planning. So, Sheriff's Department, of course. But what about Public Works? They probably have some play, but do you know what they are? What and how would you tap into them, or do they know what they can do to help out? Have you had that discussion? It's all about communication. Your executive committee should really be overseeing and facilitating 3 things. One, they're establishing command and control of planning the event in that pre-event situation. And then during the event, they're going to play a command and control role. The second thing they do, and that you would be part of as the event planners, is that they facilitate the flow of information up and down. So information should flow down from your executive planners, and then from your bottom level, the guys on the street, so to speak, where the rubber meets the road, information's got to go flow back up from that level, back up to the executive planning or your command and control element, so that they can make decisions based on all the information they're gathering. And the third thing that they have to do in that command and control or that executive committee, and again, this is pre-event and during the event, is that they have to resolve conflict. So conflict resolution is really the third major component. And if you have conflicts at your subcommittee levels, or I don't mean conflict like button heads, although that's very possible, but the conflict of we don't have enough money to pay our people the overtime. What are we going to do? Or we don't have enough of these physical resources we need to do crowd control. How are we going to handle that? Those kind of conflicts have to be resolved at the upper level, and then that information pushed back down. So communication is everything in establishing a safe and secure environment. Again, intelligence driven, but if you don't have if there's no positive intel that there's a threat, you still have to operate in a posture that there's things out there that could happen you just don't know about.
Can I give an example of a plan? In Salt Lake City, it's kind of funny that you have the motor cop here on the top of our page. I was over the Special Ops Division, which includes the motor cops, and they did it that way because you've got to have traffic control. The motor cops are the best for that. But I had an event that I was given. It was an immigration protest at Salt Lake City's main capital, the city and county. They wanted to then walk up State Street around the Capitol and then back to the city and county. I was told to plan on 3,000 people. Across the street, President Bush II was staying at the Little America. And I knew that, number one, we were going to have a lot more than 3,000 people. And then we also got a request for a protest across the street from the immigration march that was titled Death to Israel. And this person actually hired transients to walk up and down shouting inflammatory statements with carrying signs. And then on the east side was the anti-immigration. They asked for a permit also to protest at city and county. Can't deny any of them. So we knew that we were going to have a lot more than 3,000 people and there could be issues. So one of the things we did was, and knowing your thought processes, budget is number one. We contacted the organizer of both events, required them to give volunteers, people were voluntold to show up, with t-shirts specific to their event, yellow and green, and told them what to write on the silk screen on the t-shirts. And then we met with those volunteers and trained them basically how to keep their crowds in control. Didn't cost anything to the city. We already had thousands, and I had like 45 cops working that event. And the people one group wanted to really get into it with the other group. And so during the march, they positioned themselves up by the Capitol where it was a Ventry effect. It really made the crowd go together. So we put the greens and the yellows back to back with their particular groups on each side. And it made it so that we didn't have a conflict. Later I had somebody call me from Washington saying, can't tell you who I work for, but I have software and I can show you a picture from space. The software will tell you how many people you had at your event. You had 75 to 80,000 people. That's just an example of a contingency plan like he was talking about.
Yeah, so like I say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? That's kind of a cliche, but it's out there and it's true. I do want to point out two references that you all can use, just internet-based references. The Department of Justice has a booklet. It's called Planning and Managing Security for Major Special Events. It's put out by Community-Oriented Policing Services of the Department of Justice. You can find it online. It's just a PDF. This one is, I think, 22 pages, somewhere around there. It's good, a good overview, some things to consider. If you want to look it up and just reference it, it's got, some things as you go through, you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. The second thing that is in much more detail that I didn't print out is it's an event planning, it's a security and event contingency planning book by FEMA, and there's a 2010 version. It's like 200 something pages. Thus, I can print it out. But FEMA, I don't know if you all are familiar with FEMA training websites. It's really good training, web-based. Some of them is pretty long, kind of brutal to get through, but it's pretty good stuff. They do have web-based training specific to special event planning, and they do have that book I just talked to you about. It's the contingency plan. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact title on the top of my head here, but it's called the Jobs Aid Manual for the contingency or the security plan. That's got some really good. It goes much more in depth in all the different kind of contingencies that can happen. So, like I said, planning for contingencies. Even if that intelligence is negative, if you have any sort of threat or any circumstance that you need to worry about, you still have a plan for that situation that could come up that might be a more likely scenario for your event. We do want to talk about, give you two scenarios, kind of go through two scenario-based discussions based on two things that we see happening around the nation today, different events. I'm going to let Mike, are you taking me through this?
That's fine. I can help with that.
All right.
If you hold that, I'll just talk loud. So when we prepare for these, we do what's called tabletop exercises. How many of you have participated in a tabletop exercise? Okay, probably about a third of you. These are very critical. And where it is, we will come up with a scenario, and we walk through that with everyone that needs to be involved at the table. We're going to have our public utilities at the table. We're going to have all EMS services at the table. It's good to have your mayor. Anyone that would be on kind of this executive committee, your planning committee, needs to be part of this. And you walk through a specific scenario. So that's kind of what we're going to do, is kind of walk through a scenario to see the different aspects that you should consider. And so the first one we thought of that you probably see more than anything are protesters. Right? Is that accurate or not? Do you see, or what are some other common threats that you do see at your events?
The kind of thing that would cause your executive committee to have to go, we better account for that situation. Whether it's a protester might be more the metropolitan area, but go ahead.
I'd say go with protesters.
Go with protesters?
All we're worried about is the animal rights groups will show up.
Okay, so let's do that exact one then. An animal rights group shows up, and you've got one single entrance pretty much. Okay, they come in that entrance, and they have their signs or whatnot. What are you going to do? What's your plan?
Go out the back.
Right here, then we'll come back over here.
I said go out the back.
Go out the back. They're coming in, you're leaving.
Kidding.
So we've had that thread, it never materialized, but
Okay.
in our pre-planning, we established a protest area and who is responsible for getting those protesters to that area. So if they're inside, anywhere outside that protest area, this is where the protest area is, and this is where you can express your freedom of speech, you do whatever, but it needs to be in this area.
So great plan. So in your planning, you set up a protest zone. That's communicated to all event planners, to your police department, that when you see those individuals enter, then you have someone there that can direct them over to the area, and then it's identified that this is the area that you can protest. Now let's say they're protesting and they pull out some bull horns and some things to make their voices amplified. And they're kind of really loud.
So like an inland port meeting.
Yeah, and in the port meetings, okay? What are you going to do? Can you do anything?
I told the guy I was going to stuff it someplace you don't want to know.
This is why part of your planning, you need to make sure you have legal there at the table. So you know what you can do lawfully, so your police department knows what they can do, so you have a specific plan. At what point do they cross the line? So let's say now they do start to wander out of that zone that you've designated as a protest zone. Do you have a contingency plan in place to address that? Let's go a step further. So they stop protesting, but they start walking through, they go over to the 4-H exhibits, and they do start opening a few cages to let animals out. Now what happens?
Is there a code to cover that?
There should be.
If they become a public nuisance, then yes. Inciting a riot, public nuisance, all these things can actually be taken care of in that aspect of it.
Right. The key is you don't want to have to be wondering, oh, what can and can't I do at that moment. You want to know beforehand what you can do legally. How can you address the situation? Right? So when you walk through this tabletop, everyone that's there plays a part in this, and they're providing input on what their role would be. Now, most of the action taken here would be by the sheriff or whatever police officer who's there would be addressing this. But what are you going to do with all the bystanders that are just watching? What do you do if the media shows up? Okay. Not necessarily the attention you want to get.
Hey, Mike, let me interject real quick. I'm going to tell a war story. In St. Louis, we have what's called the World Agricultural Forum. It's a world where countries came together with the private sector, and they come to know the world, talk about development, agricultural development in third world countries. We had that's a very controversial area because it involves engineered food. The food has been genetically altered to make it, more drought resistant and that kind of stuff. So there were significant intelligence we had through confidential informants and other various sources that we were going to have major outbreaks of protesting, and that they would use what's called direct action techniques, which is to chain themselves together. And I don't know, some of you might remember the World Trade Organization in Seattle in about 1998 time frame. Just tore the city up. It got really violent. A lot of violent protesters. They get what they call the black bloc. Black bloc protesters they're wear the hoods, the black mask, and they'll go down, they'll break windows and just destroy your city. We had information that those people were going to show up. So St. Louis City Police Department, which isn't necessarily have a strong reputation for maintaining constitutional standards of policing, went out and made preemptive arrests. Now, let me ask you, while it seems like it might make sense, is it legal to arrest somebody who hasn't committed a crime yet? Is that legal? No. Well, they did that. They went out, they seized bicycles, because there might be a big protest using bicycles, and they arrested people, and they said to the newspaper, we're making preemptive arrests. Well, the courts didn't find that to be constitutional. It was an issue with that. Many lawsuits followed, and part of the breakdown there was, bottom line is, it's legal to show up and protest in a peaceful way that's in accordance with the First Amendment. It's called First Amendment rights, protesting. But then, of course, it has to be in keeping with the local ordinances that are protests. So that's why you set up First Amendment areas, First Amendment protest areas. You can't, of course, they frown upon cities going out and arresting people before a crime is happened. That's called a lack of probable cause. It's a major problem. And of course, the city paid out a chunk of money in penalties and legal fines. But the point being, you've got to sit and think about what these kinds of things are before the fact. Have that conversation. Have a conversation with your legal counsel at your county, whoever that may be, and make sure you come to a resolution. You have the ordinances and statutes that are available. You know what they are, and you use them appropriately.
Put all that in your ops plan. Another example is I was over the security for the LDS Church conference from the city point of view. You've got 20,000 people in the conference center, 20,000 people outside waiting to go in, 20,000 people milling around, 20,000 guys looking for 20,000 girls because they need to know why. So, and throw in amongst that about 3 dozen protesters. Now these protesters don't just hate the LDS Church, they hate everybody. They protest the World Series, they protest the Catholic Church, they protest any major event. This is just one more. And they make their living by suing the municipalities who infringe upon their rights, just like that. Just like the Westboro Baptist Church does, when they protest funerals of soldiers, and then they're not, what they do is deemed, in their minds, wrong. Their treatment is wrong in their minds, then they sue. And that's how they make money. With the conference, our city attorney, not the prosecutor, the city attorney, actually would go into the command center with me for the Saturday all day and Sunday all day. And if something happened, we had designated protest zones. But protesters are both the ones against the LDS Church or against the event, but also the people from the LDS Church. They had their designated spot too. I couldn't let the one side wander freely and cage the other people. Both sides had to be, and then you have to figure out and have in your option plan what happens if somebody deviates from the plan. I just wanted to throw that in.
All right, we have 2 more minutes. One other scenario, fireworks, an active shooter. So the Garland Festival out in California a couple of years ago. Garland Festival in Garland. Right, an active shooter comes in, kills a couple of people, I think about 15 or 16 others are wounded. So you're at your festival, and a gentleman comes up to the entrance carrying a rifle. What can you do? Okay, this is where it's important you get your legal involved as well, right? Typically, we can't do anything. They have a right to carry. But how are you going to communicate that amongst your executive committee or amongst your law enforcement presence there at the fair? So you got to think about communication. But now we do have someone that does come in and does start shooting. What's your contingency? What happens then? I mean, obviously law enforcement is going to respond, but you can have just private citizens responding too. How many private citizens that go to these events that are armed down in Sevier County? I mean, I'm from Sevier County. I grew up in Redmond. Right? Everyone's got a gun. Okay? So how many people are going to respond and start shooting potentially? I mean, it can escalate very quickly. Now, to throw another wrench in this whole thing, if the active shooter starts spouting off radical things, that he's a supporter of ISIS or whatnot, then it's going to be deemed terrorism. What changes? I guarantee you, we're going to be coming in that situation as well.
We're 2 hours away, so.
Yeah, the event will be over with. Yeah, by the time we get there. But the actual investigation piece is where we will come in. So what does that mean? What does that mean to your fair? What does that mean to all those bystanders? What about all the victims? Then you've got the witnesses. Do you have contingency plans to address all of that afterwards? And those are things that you would discuss in your tabletop exercise to make sure that you're prepared. Another piece, do you have mutual aid agreements with surrounding counties, surrounding towns, that they're going to come in and help as well? Because you'll get overwhelmed very quickly and need more resources. And that is one point where, as an FBI, we can come in and provide those additional resources if it falls under a jurisdiction where we can come.
Let me just ask real quick. Let me just change the scenario a little bit. First of all, a guy shows up, AR-15 slung over his shoulder, shows up at the county fair. Illegal or not? It's legal, right? What if he's the guy that we know to be, the sheriff's office has had multiple interactions with? We know this guy to be a little, touched in the head. He's showing up. Do we need to have justification to see his weapon? No, we don't. So, do we have any?
Following around?
You can follow around, keep an eye on him. Is there any? If anybody here knows of a way to prevent that guy under that circumstance from all of a sudden taking that weapon off his shoulder, put it up, and start to fire rounds off, then please let me know, because we are struggling nationwide with that question. How to stop that event? We haven't come up with an answer. But it goes from a keep an eye on this guy to now we have to react, and we have to react quickly. Now, in an area where you've got everybody has a gun and a police officer shows up, what does he have to try to figure out in this chaos? Who's the bad guy? Everybody's got a gun. Now, probably the guy with the AR-15, but it's chaos and it's trying to figure this out. And is that guy alone? I mean, we have a situation in Las Vegas Walmart. Two shooters in the Walmart shooting it up. Concealed carry, the guy who's a citizen with concealed carry, pulls a gun out to try to neutralize the subject. Second person shows up, pops the guy in the head. So now the citizen's dead, trying to intervene in this active shooter situation, but the active shooter was on the wrong. And we didn't have the intel. This person who was wanted to be that helpful citizen didn't have that total picture of the situation. It's a chaotic situation. And then, of course, there's that aftermath of planning. Does your county have a mass casualty incident plan? Do your hospitals know how to handle that? Do you know how to get people out of there quickly, as fast as you can, given the resources you have up to the major trauma center and that kind of stuff? Which I suppose you probably do for the car accident, but what if there's 15 people that are down? That kind of thing. So those are all things, as you develop a scenario and a situation, as you have that discussion, start to think about that. And then, like Steve said, put those things, document those conversations, put them in your ops plans, make sure that there's a record of we've had this, going back to this identification situation. That you, the planners, have been thorough as possibly, as thorough as is reasonable, knowing that you can't account for every 1,000 possibilities. Okay?
Then it kind of goes back, tied back into the Fusion Center or the SIDAC. If you want to know if there are animal rights activists out there that are preparing to demonstrate at your event, again, submit that request to the SIDAC. If specific individuals you hear are having potential information that someone could be showing up to disturb, whatever it is, and you can ask them specifically, and they can send out requests for others to try to determine that, get that information for you.
An example is, using the example of the Westboro Baptist Church, our SIAC doesn't keep an eye on what they do. However, the Fusion Center where they live, and the police department where they live, knows and hears what's going on. So if they were coming down to protest your event, they would know, they would contact the SIAC. The SIAC could then let you know, and there would just be some intel that you might not have. It's not like the SIAC keeps track of every threat, but they keep track of everything that each fusion center, because they all communicate. One thing they found after 9/11 was there was a lot of information out there in certain geographic regions. Information like, I've got a bunch of people from a foreign country that want to learn how to fly a plane, but they don't care about learning how to land that plane. that kind of intel, the information sharing has gotten much, much better. And that, take advantage of that. Any questions?
I'm just going to add a piece I haven't heard here. I'm an emergency manager for the county. Every county's got an emergency manager, and we're kind of the central hub for doing the community or the county emergency plans. And so we work with the public safety folks already on a day-to-day basis. When we start looking at special events, if we're not working to coordinate with you and what you need to do, then we need to be in looking at the event planning and kind of help with that. We've got the network for all the other external resources that may be needed, police, fire, EMS, and so forth. So tie your emergency manager into what you're doing.
And that's layered also, like Salt Lake City has an emergency manager, the county has an emergency manager, the state has an emergency manager, and they hold those events.
So let me second what he just said. So another job that I have at the FBI is on the weapons and I deal with weapons and mass destruction drugs. So chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. One of my responsibilities is to try to know all of the assets that are across the state that would be able to respond and deal with chemical incidents, nefarious chemical incidents, not just a hazard, but one that has an intent to cause harm. One of the, and I haven't met you, I've been doing this for about 4 months. One of the two groups that I like to know because they always know everybody. One is emergency management. The county emergency management knows everybody in the county and have relationships. The second one that I use is public health. County public health agency, because they're tied into the local medical and tied into the city. So those are the two. It's really hard for me to get around and meet all the hazard teams, all the sheriff's offices. Utah's a big state. Oh, by the way, I cover Idaho, Montana. So for emergency management, for me, it's not the county level, but the state level. But for anybody local, make sure your emergency manager is plugged into your management. It's a huge asset.
Any other questions?
You know, we look at these things from the federal side, huge events, realizing that you're talking about a county fair. We have a county here that might have 1,000 people. So, trying to grasp some of the stuff we talked about county here level, the level of your event, and just think about the possibility.
If you have questions going forward, let us know. Email setting up a tabletop exercise provides students with that as well. But it's critical that you do those with this plan on all these groups, the public health, or the EMS, the emergency management, folks, get that involved. Walk this experience.
If you need to hold us, the FBI is actually looking for people off the facilities. I don't know how to do it. Google us, Salt Lake City, or I'm sure Google us, Alex, could give you our contact. We live in your communities, we're not something to Washington, we actually are.
Thank you.